broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Welcome to The Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ progressive news and talk show in these United States. I'm your host, John Parker, in studio with my executive producer, Jim Pounds. What have we got on the show today? We've got some upcoming queer films and TV, because Pride is all year round, not just this month. So we're going to tell you what to get on your calendars and keep them ready to go. But up first, founding artistic director of Invictus Theatre in Chicago, Charles Askenaizer, joins us right now at Invictus Theatre, playing you're in residence at the Windy City Playhouse, Angels in America.
Correct.
Previews opens June 28th. And I will say, and I'm not just saying this, and you all will understand in a second, if you are in an 8-hour radius of Chicago, make plans now, because Angels is rarely produced on stage. We were doing some research this morning. We think in Chicago, as far as we know, the last production was in 2012. Last on Broadway in 2018. Here in the Twin Cities is actually really hard. We found a Theater Coup d'Etat production in 2012. Macalester College did a 2021 production, but it was only 2 weekends. The point being, pack your bags. Charles is the founding artistic director of Invictus Theatre, also the director of Angels in America. He won the 2023 Jeff Award, non-equity wing, for his direction of the company's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. In 2024, Charles was named one of New City Magazine's Players 50 2024, the Rising Stars and Storefront Stalwarts. Charles has worked with the Citadel Theater, City Lit, Raven, Chicago Dramatists, The Side Project. This is just a partial biography, folks. Charles, welcome to The Gailey Show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. What an intro. Ooh, I'm tearing up.
We like to. There's no queer humility here. There is major, trumpets. Speaking of trumpets. All right, Charles. The election happened, the catastrophe. A couple days afterwards, I started hearing the oboe from the HBO production of Angels in America. And if you've listened or watched the show, you know there's this gorgeous oboe solo. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get it out of my head. So I said, I'm going to watch it. I had HBO Max. So I start watching it. After, Jim and my partner other partner, we're in a throuple, went to bed. I was like, I'm going to start, watching this. And Jim was like, I want to watch it too. So we binged the entire 6-part series. I got done, sobbed through the whole thing, and was like, I got to watch it again. So then I proceeded to binge watch the entire 6-part series all over again, finished it, sobbed all the way through, and said, I have to watch it again. Charles, I watched this thing 3 times after the election because so much of it was so relevant to what was going on. I felt like those lines, I'm like, we could be saying these lines right now. And so Jim comes up one day out of the basement and was holding a copy of the plays. And I went, I'm reading this. And so I took the copies and I just started, voraciously diving into them. And I just happened on a whim after getting through part 1 and going, gosh, it would be so great to just say these lines out loud right now with other people. And Jim is an actor. He's done 100 shows here in the Twin Cities. And so he's like, oh, I can make that happen. And like a week later, he had a whole cast set up. And so we did it was a private reading in our condo. And then in one of the castmates, we did part 2 in one of the castmates' place where we brought food, we did snacks, we did an act, we had some snacks, we did an act, read it. It took, 3.5 hours. You know how long the play is. And I sobbed through the whole thing because it is such a monumental play. And I'm making this all about me right now. So what I'm basically saying is we're already trying to figure out how do we get to Chicago, because it runs through September 7th to see this thing, because it's a Pulitzer Prize. It's monumental. It's queer history. People need to go and see it. So I am just so grateful that you are mounting this show right now, because it has just been speaking to me on so many levels since the catastrophe last November. So please tell us all about it.
Oh my goodness. Where do I begin? Yeah, I think, I had a similar reaction to you. I mean, I had read it I actually hadn't read the full play until I was like older, until I think it was like 2019 was when I first read part 1 and part 2. Mm-hmm. And I remember my jaw just dropping at the end. And then of course, we were dealing with the pandemic and everything like that. And, other things came into my mind. And then I actually had a company member who suggested that we produce it. who's actually assistant directing this production as well as doing the set for it. Kevin Rolfs, who's an absolute genius. And I reread it last year in preparation for this season, and it was same thing. By the end of Perestroika, I was in tears and just jaw on the floor. And it's interesting. Tony Kushner, people ask him, how did you get to be so prescient with your writing? And he says, he kind of scoffs and is like, I just write about what's going on now. And I mean, this is a play that, I think it premiered in 92 on Broadway, but it had this long process before it. And, here we are in 2025, and the themes are still resonant, still relevant, and still impactful.
I did an interview for another podcast that we do, This Queer Book Saved My Life. And it's about queer people come on and they talk about a piece of literature that had a life-saving impact for them. And the guest was talking about, he read it in high school, like he just turned 18 years old. And he said, this play taught me everything I need to know, and has borne out now for decades, everything I need to know about American politics and what it is to live as a gay person in this country. And he was so accurate at capturing the moment. And I think also we just never let go of that moment. Like everything just, I'm learning again history of how so much of this is just recycled over and over and over again, and how what we're happening now, maybe a turbocharged moment of, I almost swore, sorry, FCC, of stuff that we were dealing with in the 1980s. This is a difficult production. And because you're doing both parts,
yes,
and you're doing them simultaneously. I guess my first question is, why do you hate your actors? Because you're doing part one on like a Friday night, then you're making them do it again on Saturday at noon, then you're doing part two, and then like you're alternating. It is a bear of a schedule.
Yeah. I love my actors. Actually, our actors are absolutely brilliant, and I mean the actors are yes. And I think a lot of them. I think it's. How do I articulate this? There is an exhaustion, but it's a good exhaustion. It's like after you run like 5 miles and you're done and all those endorphins are kicking in, it's like, to be able to be in the presence of something so great, like a masterpiece, truly like an American masterpiece, and to interact with this text, there's something really energizing about it too. And I think the whole cast is, I mean, they're so wonderful, and they've so dug into that, and it's I think they kind of feed off of it and feed off the energy. And now that we have audiences and previews, they're feeding off the audience's energy too, and so it's just kind of like these kind of like bumps that keep propelling it forward. But yeah, and we have a long rehearsal process that we've done. I mean, it's a 26-week commitment, so for the actors, it's we started rehearsing this in February. Wow. And here it is June, and we're getting into previews. So we made sure that we had enough time to really dig into the text, because that's what the text deserves, and that's what the actors deserve, and that's ultimately what the audience deserves too.
I have a curiosity question. I noted that you have an equal number of understudies to regular actors. Is it likely, if one is cast as an understudy in this production, that you might go on to do that role, given that schedule?
We always hope not.
Right.
We do have scheduled understudy performances as well, because I mean, it's only fair to the understudies to put so much work into this. And, right. Most productions you don't get to perform, but at least this one, they'll get a chance to actually do it. So we have a scheduled performance of Millennium Approaches and a scheduled performance of Perestroika. And then there's some of the actors, when we brought them on, had some conflicts with the performances. So there are a few understudies that know that they will be going on in the performances ahead of time.
That's good.
Yeah.
There's so much to, as a director, I'm curious. There are so many themes happening in this play. And I think, 5 years ago, obviously the COVID HIV storylines were and I'm sure people watching it today will be like, oh, wow, like there's a lot there. But I mean, we basically have Roy Cohn in the White House, like Roy Cohn, the absolute worst possible version of Roy Cohn, which you think at the time, we already got that one. For you, as a director, how were you navigating all the different ways that you could have gone with this show? Like, what were the choices that you felt you had to make in directing this one to kind of meet the moment?
Yeah, it is without a doubt overwhelming, because when people ask me what the play is about,
Mhm.
I have a hard time of saying, it's and I think the superlative title for it, a gay fantasia on national themes, is probably the best way to sum it up, because it is just so expansive. And so, first and foremost, it's the actors. Like, the relationships on stage are crucial to it. And when this play was first workshopped, they didn't really have a budget. Their angel, I think, was someone that was just standing on a ladder. And, they said it had this huge, enormous impact when she did that. So, trusting the text and trusting that it's enough, that you don't have to put a lot of bells and whistles on it, even though it's very, very tempting to. There's one period where we considered actually flying the angel with like cabling and everything. And I am so glad we didn't, because it would have been a nightmare. Right. But also, I mean, there was a lot of dramaturgical work done. Like, I watched endless documentaries about the 80s, about the AIDS crisis, read countless books. There's actually a really, really great resource called The World Only Spins Forward, which is actually interviews with everyone who's ever worked on the show, anyone that they could get their hands on, including Tony Kushner, including like actors from the HBO version that you mentioned.
What is this?
It's called The World Only Spins Forward, and I'm actually blanking on the authors' names, but it is brilliant. And I think it is essential for anyone who's looking to produce angels, because it really helps kind of distill, the character motivations, but also the context of why the play was written, when it was written, how it's been received over time as well. It is fascinating and so helpful. But anyway,
I'm not producing it.
Yeah. One of the things that we did hook onto, and anyone that will see the show will see, at least in Millennium Approaches, they talk so much about justice, and it is the theme. And you'll see that our set is actually kind of this crumbling hall of justice, and there's so much connection with God and the absence of God with the angels, and God is tied into our law as well too. And so, we kind of took that and at least based our set on that, and I think it's actually working quite effectively.
I have to take a break here. We're going to have more with Charles Askenaizer, who is the founding artistic director of Invictus Theatre. We're talking about Angels in America, which opens June 28th. Connect with more progressive news and radio at am950radio.com and heartlandsignal.com. You're listening to The Gailey Show. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. We're coming up on the bottom of the hour. Angels in America is opening June 28th, a production of Invictus Theatre, which is playing at Chicago's Windy City Playhouse. Invictus Theatre is in residence there. It is directed by their founding artistic director, Charles Askenaizer, who is here with us. Charles, another big theme of the show is America and folks' relation to America. And I have been quoting and singing Belize's monologue about America at I think it's in part 2, about how that note of America is placed so high in our anthem that nobody can reach it. For you and the cast, as you were rehearsing since February, which is an amazing amount of time to be sitting and working with this play, what's come up for y'all about America and living in this country right now?
Oh my goodness. I think everyone just sort of feels it in the rehearsal room. And I mean, it's sort of the words are kind of speaking what everyone is feeling. You mentioned your emotional reaction to watching the HBO special, and it's very much the same. There are certainly many, many, many tears in the rehearsal room. And I think, I don't know if it's necessarily not already illuminating something that we don't already know about America. I think it's just really putting words to it, which is the great thing of theater, is that it's putting words to the wordless, or at least putting words to experiences. So, I think there's great power in that as well too. So I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry I can't be more penetrating on it, but I think that's it's probably the best answer I can give, is that I think it's it's creating a real communal sense amongst the cast of the importance of the play.
Mm-hmm. And you were saying before the break, a big theme also of the plays is justice. And so your set is, if I recall that correctly, is in a crumbling hall of justice.
An abandoned hall of justice. Like it's under construction. I mean, it's really cool. We've got a couple levels in it too, obviously for our angels and for different scenes. But it's America's sort of this work in progress still. We're a very young country as well, and I think that kind of feeds in really nicely to the metaphor that we've kind of put into our set. So, and you could either look at it like it's crumbling or it's under construction. I like to think like glass half full, like things will get better. And that's sort of Kushner's message at the end is, there's great struggle before things get better.
Right.
I'm not suggesting this, but what is that? There's an anarchist phrase, building the new world in the shell of the old. So building new justice in the shell of the old.
Yeah.
And the theater's about 94 seats, right? So this is an intimate, very intimate experience.
Yeah. Depending on where you're sitting, you'll be very close to the actors. I mean, the front row, I think there's a couple scenes where you're just like a foot, 2 feet away from the actors.
In the scene.
Reach out to touch them. Yeah. Yeah.
So does it have like a high rake?
We do. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Even, I mean, that sounds like there would be no bad seat in that house.
No. Yeah.
Based off of how how I'm hearing the staging and envisioning it right now, not actually knowing it. And what a great way, I think, also to do this particular play. Like, I'm sure the Broadway one, which was, in a Broadway house, and I'm sure had all of the wires and everything, and probably dealing with all the Spider-Man, Julie Taymor stuff of swinging, people around the stage. I imagine that version of spectacle is impactful, but this show to me, I think, maybe does need to be in a smaller, more intimate venue because it just vibrates, it hums.
Yeah. You can't escape it when it's so intimate. I mean, it is right there in your face. You're part of the world in a way. So I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, I like to see theater.
There's when I talk to directors and playwrights and actors, they always say that there's something that they get into the process they didn't even realize was going to become a thing for them, like an insight or a revelation, which are synonyms for you. Was there something similar for you as you were directing it? Like you got into the rehearsal process and went, oh, wait, this is what this scene is about. Or, oh, I'm totally thinking about this one thing in a completely different way now.
Yeah. I think there was a lot of those. I think the biggest one is the cast. We were all talking about the angels, and the angels aren't exactly benevolent in this play. They want Prior to stop moving. They want the world to stop moving, which is essentially death. And these angels are sort of like, the book that they give Prior, the prophecy, is the AIDS virus. And, they, and not to get too political, but we talked about how the angels are sort of the GOP. Like it is, stop having sex, stop, connecting with each other. And, and of course, Prior, in his beautiful monologue, when he's in heaven talking to the angels, says, we can't, we're human beings. Like, that's not the way we work, and in a way, he kind of becomes a prophet for the angels too, of bringing emotion to them and feeling, because Kushner very explicitly describes the angels as like unimaginative bureaucrats. Like they don't have feeling, they don't understand it, and since they've been abandoned by God, their world is falling apart, but they can't reconcile it because they don't have emotion, they don't have feeling. And so he kind of imparts that with them when he says, sue God.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's brilliant.
Speaking of suing, Roy.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about with Roy?
I don't know. I feel like we just say Roy and we can move on. But
I will say it's interesting, the character that Kushner's created. So I watched a few documentaries about Roy and did some research about him. And what I really appreciate that Kushner does, and I think adds to the brilliance of the play, is that he doesn't make him like this mustache twirling villain. He makes him a complex human being, and he's an interpretation of Roy Cohn. He's like Richard III, like he's self-loathing. He hates that he's Jewish. He hates that he's gay. Everything about himself he hates. And he lives in a world that hates him as well too. And so of course he tries to look for power and like looks to, change the world, much the same way as Richard III. And he's got some of the most Shakespearean language of all the characters too. I mean, when he talks about this is enzymes and acids, gastric juices, churning, it's so thick and muscular and like kind of disgusting too. So I love what Kushner has done with him. And I think it's absolutely brilliant because it'd be so easy to just judge Roy kind of the way he judges Joe. He doesn't give Joe an ending. He kind of says, Harper breaks up with Joe, and that's it. Everyone else kind of gets conclusion, but Joe, he's very hard on Joe.
Yeah.
Very,
yeah,
very. It was something when we did the readings, I was like, oh wow, that whole storyline, that whole what's going to happen to him. We know Mother Pitt.
Yeah.
I love that, and I think that's such a beautiful. If you don't mind, I want to close on this image because we ended up going to New York in April, and I went to we went to the Bethesda Fountain, and it was just this almost quasi-spiritual moment for me. And I think that the speeches at the end at Bethesda Fountain are just so what I want this country to be and headed in. And so that's why I'm just so grateful, Charles, that you all are putting this show together and that it opens June 28th. Previews currently right now for folks in Chicago, runs through September 7th. You can go to Invictus Theatre co.com for tickets. Charles, friend of the show, please, anytime you got stuff coming up there, let us know. We'll have you back on.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We are going to take a quick break. More with The Gailey Show when we come back. Stay tuned.